So I recently switched from the iPhone 14 Pro Max down to last year's iPhone 13 mini, a massive jump that was the ultimate test of whether a power user could really downgrade to the lowest model from an earlier year. And the largest pain point of it was battery life. No surprise there. Going from nearly a 2-day 4,323 milliamp battery on the Pro Max down to nearly half that at 2,406 on the Mini. So this video is going to use a lot of real screenshots of screen time. So my advice to you is take a look at yours and compare it to this video and see if you could realistically use an iPhone mini based on your current performance. So here's my overall thoughts. This is a phone where you're going to use most, if not all, of the battery life on your phone. So if you're somebody who gets battery range anxiety, now is the time to turn off that battery percentage because it's not going to be good. But that's only in the case of some circumstances, which I'm going to show you. See, looking at my overall battery life over 9 days, you can see my average screen time is 3 hours and 39 minutes with a max of about 5 to 5.5 hours and an average idle screen time of 3 hours and 17 minutes, up to a max of 5 to 6 hours. So this sounds really low, but I encourage you to look at your screen time and see how it differs because I feel like I'm on my phone pretty much consistently all day. And those frequent check-ins, the scrolling through social media, the responding to emails and calls, and they really slowly add up all throughout the day. With all of that use, you can see my battery usage did tend to come close to 100% on some days, but averaged between 80 and 90 of my battery life on most days. There were very few times that I actually needed to stop and then charge my phone later in the afternoon. And each time it happened, which I think was only about twice over the course of a month, they were really easily explained by power-hungry tasks like restoring my phone from backup from the very first day that I got it, or using wireless CarPlay without charging my phone for like an hour-long drive or something like that. So taking a look day by day, you can see my phone was used for 4 hours with the screen off for 6 hours. I used roughly 73% of my battery. Safari was the main culprit behind battery use, with TikTok coming in close second, for a grand total of 30 minutes each. Here's a look at everything I used over that time, and then here it is again later on with minutes. So day 2 was a 4-hour screen time and 4 hours with the screen off for roughly 85% battery life. Safari and TikTok again were the main uses, with Google, Amazon, and Twitter coming in after that. You can see by the hour how much time was spent on each of those apps. So day 3, music led a huge amount of battery life drain with up to 30% with just 2.5 hours of background listening. So I wasn't even using it, which is actually really interesting because if I skip ahead to day 4 here, you'll see that Spotify used for the same amount of time, 2.5 hours, but only used 20% of the battery life. So if you're wondering, it does appear that Apple Music uses significantly more battery life when considering a phone with this size battery. Day 5 was a heavy battery usage day, with TikTok and Twitter being the main reason behind that. By day 6, I used most of the screen time of the entire 10 days, totaling over 10 hours of total use. Despite that high use, it was still under 75% battery use. Most of that came from FaceTime usage for an hour and a half, which appeared to be extremely efficient, despite being a power-hungry task that I would assume would drain battery. So if you're somebody who spends a lot of time on the phone like I do, you can trust this phone. Day 7 was a typical day with heavy TikTok use, but Safari, interestingly, took 9% battery in just 11 minutes of use. Browsing Safari and opening a lot of tabs, I felt the phone getting a lot hotter, and you can see it dropped just 27% in just 32 minutes of use. There are definitely circumstances where intense tasks lead to rapid battery drain, as you can see here. On day 9, it was an average day, but you can see with the absence of TikTok, I still used the typical 3.5 hours of screen time, but used under 50% of total battery. So you can see how some of these certain apps are really bad. If you're somebody who's on TikTok all the time, this battery is just gonna drain like crazy. So that was my overall day-by-day usage, but a couple of very specific days I wanted to note here where I took detailed screenshots of the following. So on day 1 with the iPhone 13 mini, I was doing a lot of power-hungry tasks, right? I was restoring the phone from backup, I was setting up all of my accounts, I was just excited to try and use the phone overall anyway. The phone got really hot, and you can see how it steadily dropped off until it ultimately just dies at the end of the day. Now fast forwarding another day with heavy phone use, and specifically the use of wireless CarPlay. I had a screen time that day of 5.5 hours and the demanding performance of CarPlay wirelessly without charging, and that led me to needing to charge my phone by only 7 p.m. Now with wired CarPlay, this obviously isn't an issue because it's charging while you're using it, but if you are a wireless CarPlay user, you need to know that this is a problem. Now fast forwarding to a day where I had heavy calls, accounting 22% of my battery, you can see the phone easily held up its charge using under 50%. This shows you that taking calls on the iPhone 13 mini really excels in daily use, not leading to excessive battery drain. And I mean, it is a phone, so if anything's gonna work, I do feel like that should, but it does. So that's my breakdown of the iPhone 13 mini for about a month of battery monitoring. I would say it surprised me how random tasks like Safari could sometimes lead to massive battery drain, while things like calls could just perform exceptionally well without issue. To this day, and I use my mini in my regular life, the only limitation I have is not being able to use wireless CarPlay simply for that battery drain. It gets so hot while I'm using it that I'm afraid to like charge it and then it get hotter and then lead to much worse battery. So I just kind of ignore that and I just use wired CarPlay with this thing, something that I was still able to do on my Pro Max. So it is a feature that I'm losing, so to speak. Now, my overall advice to you is compare your current phone usage to this video to see if a mini is actually right for you. And I don't know, maybe don't use TikTok. The overall battery health at the time of making this video, by the way, was 96%, and the phone itself is a year old, so take all of that into consideration as well. If you do have specific questions about this phone and you want me to test and you want me to release anything new on this phone, let me know in the comments down below. As always, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next